Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of My Counselor Live. My name is Matthew Thrower, and I'm your host of this My Counselor Live episode. I want to introduce you to our featured guest, who happens to be the founder of MyCounselor.Online, Josh Spurlock. Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself to the viewers, possibly who are new out there.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here with you, Matt. Like I said, I founded MyCounselor.Online a little over 10 years ago after finishing up Bible college and seminary, because God called me to create a counseling practice that would increase access to excellent Christian counseling. So we've got a sweet team that does that and continues to grow and gets a chance to create resources like the MyCounselorLIVE. So to be here with you talking about one of the resources, this case that I've written on a burnout, but we're going to have some fun.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to talk about that. You recently wrote an article about burnout in ministry, symptoms, causes, and preventions. And
Which
hey, as
is
a
not so
pastor,
fun.
no, it's not. As a pastor, I get it. I mean, I've walked with people who have been through that season of burnout. And honestly, I think I've been through burnout before. Talk to us a little bit.
I think
What
anybody
inspired
that's
you?
been in ministry for any period of time has experienced some level of burnout.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what inspired you to write this article?
Yeah. So I'm, like I said, went to Bible college, went to seminary. My closest friends are pastors and missionaries spread out around the country and around the world. And the heart and focus of our practice is really caring for ministers and missionaries. We care for a lot of different folks, but they just hold a special place in our heart. And a lot of what we see with folks that come in that are ministers, missionaries coming in for counseling, that there's an aspect of burnout that's a part of it that has gotten a lot of times to the place where it's really affecting their marriage, affecting their family life, and it's certainly affecting their ability to find joy in the work that they're doing and be fully effective in the ministry that they're engaging. That there's just this kind of dark shadow that's hanging over the top of their head, or cloud hanging over the top of their head a little bit, and they're trying to figure out what to do with this. And so it was on my heart to write something of a preventative nature, right, to kind of get out ahead of and in front of those realities, so that maybe we can get some help before it gets that bad.
Yeah, so we're dealing with ministry, but honestly, maybe somebody who's not in ministry, maybe they're leading a team or a business. Is this article for them?
Absolutely. I mean, we all face that. And if you're in a context where there's high stress and there's expected performance and engagement, and particularly if it's in a helping capacity or a leadership capacity in some way, where you're carrying not only the weight and load of your own life and responsibilities, but you're shouldering the burden of a team and others as well. So you're taking on that weight. It's something that you're going to face as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something I've faced, something I've watched people in ministry face. But before we get into anything else, let's talk specifically, mainly in the context of ministry, since that's what the article is for. What is burnout?
So burnout is the kind of a state of mental and emotional exhaustion and fatigue, right? It's like where we get on this edge of moving into depression from just a constant grind of the stress and emotional burden of the work that we're engaging in. And what happens is we get in this space where we lose our drive, lose our enjoyment of things that we normally enjoy in our work, in our engagement, that the day begins to look like drudgery as opposed to something we're excited about. And we're just tired before the day even begins, because we're just in that space of, instead of being excited and energized, we're just like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore.
So Josh, in your article, you draw out a distinction between three stages of burnout. Describe each of these: stressed, overwhelmed, and crispy.
Yeah. So I think we all know what it's like to be stressed, right? That's when you're in a season of your work, your ministry that you're engaging, and it's just weighing heavy. There's a lot of stuff happening. Maybe there's conflict that you're facing and dealing with. Maybe there's budgetary struggles that you're dealing with. Maybe there's just a lot of needs, maybe loss or tragedy, or going through a COVID season where there's so much change and shift
Mhm.
and tension in the country, in every congregation, and navigating a pandemic. I mean, there's a season of it being unusually stressful, right?
Mm.
Like beyond just kind of the day-to-day normal grind that's a part of work and ministry and life. It's kind of taken it up a level, and we're in this stress place. And so everybody faces that. It's just a part of the ebb and flow seasons of life, challenges that come up. But if we get stuck there, right, like if it's a prolonged season and it just like keeps coming, that doesn't, it ebbs, but it doesn't flow, right? Like there's not any relief or reprieve from it over an extended period of time. The effect of that is we get exhausted of our mental and emotional resources. Like the gas tank eventually hits, zero, or starts
Mhm.
hitting the check, the little yellow light pops in that it's getting low, right? And that's that overwhelmed place. It's like it goes from, hey, it's a stressful season, but I'm leaning in and I've got this, and it can roll with the punches, to back on our heels a little bit. And we're like, man, this
Mm.
is this is getting to be a bit much. Like if this doesn't let up, like this can't keep going on indefinitely like this. I'm not gonna make it.
Mm.
And if it doesn't relent the season, and if nothing changes and we just kind of keep rolling, that's when we start getting crispy around the edges.
Yeah, if I can, I can dive in a little bit into that because I know what that's like. When I read through how you described crispy,
Yeah.
like I was like, hey, that was me at one point. I remember being in an airport one day with my family on vacation, and all of a sudden I just felt this overwhelming feeling. Like I'm not claustrophobic, but I felt claustrophobic. And so I told my wife, I was like, what is going on? And she
Yeah.
told me to go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, dude, you had a panic attack. I'm like, no, I'm strong.
Yeah.
But what it was something inside of me was
Mm,
telling me
mm,
you're doing too much, you're experiencing burnout. And it's like
yeah.
you said, the spouse was there the whole time, like, Matthew, you need to slow down. So let's dive into some of the causes. And this is probably something we could be at all day long. But what are some of the causes of burnout, and particularly in ministry?
Yeah. So some of the basic stuff is so basic and simple that it gets neglected, right? That
Hmm.
we're it's so common sense or so right in front of us that it just gets overlooked. But there's just things like basic self-care. You're have paying attention to what it is that you're eating, right? That tends to, as you get into those stressed seasons, like it's fast paced, and eating habits tend to go out the window. Our good eating habits tend to go out the window, and it's
Hmm.
more drive through. It's more just kind of eating on the run as we run from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And so our body stops getting the regular healthy nutrition that it
Hmm.
needs. There's sleep, right? We talked about how God designed us to need something like 7 to 9 hours, depending on your body makeup, in order to be fully healthy and functional. But it's just starts to get cut into because we're running here, running there. Schedule doesn't make a lot of time for it, and you're still trying to balance family. And so that turns into 6 and 5 hours. And then we're feeling maybe stressed, and that keeps us up, and we're getting 4 or 5 hours.
Hmm.
So the early warning indicators are really just some of these basic needs of the body that God designed us with start to get neglected which then begin to compound the effect of the stress that we're experiencing. And as the body gets fatigued, there's this really cool Vince Lombardi quote that I love that says, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all."
Mm,
And as our body gets worn down and fatigued, then we start to get more overwhelmed because we're facing the challenges that keep coming, and we have less resources to face them with,
mm,
mentally and emotionally, physically, relationally. There's neglect that starts happening because we're busy and we're disconnected and we're irritable. So there starts to be disconnect with a spouse. We're not connecting with friends because we're too busy with trying to get caught up. And it just starts to set in. So those are like the yellow flags that
mhm,
you can start to identify right off the bat, that I think I'm headed down a road that's not going to end so well for me.
mm. Yeah, so let's talk about some ways we can prevent, like what are some tangible things that we can do to prevent or treat burnout? I mean, I could tell you some things I've done. Some of the things
Yeah.
I knew I had to stop doing was chasing after the wrong metrics,
Mm-hmm.
like living for the applause of others. That's
Mm-hmm.
something I'm still working on.
Yeah.
I had a mentor tell me to calendar every single thing, and he
Mm-hmm.
meant it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
calendar gym time, Bible study, prayer. Every little thing is on my calendar
Yes.
because hours are something we can't get back. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you have some ways we can prevent or treat burnout. Would you help us out with that?
Yeah, totally. Those are great preventative pieces, right? And they're
Yeah.
great ways to begin to get on track, making sure that we're putting into the schedule first the things that matter most, not just having the schedule get filled by what's
Mm-hmm.
urgent. The tyranny of the urgent is a real thing, and it will rob our life of the things that are really important and really matter, because it will constantly fill our schedule with the things that are calling out for our attention at any given point in time. And so those are really kind of, again, tactical, practical things that we can do to be aware of what it is that we are, um, uh, how we're budgeting, how we're spending our time, how we're engaging. Are we taking care of our body the way that we need to? There's this whole nother level, though, that's important to pay attention to also, right? That the kind of unconscious motivators that are there, right? And you named and identified one with the mentor in your life,
Yeah.
saying, man, that piece of needing the applause, needing the kind of praise, kind of pursuing that, that goes beyond the tactical practical skills, because you can know what to do and being able to do it are two different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when we find ourselves unable to do the things that we know we should do and would help for one reason or another, like, yeah, I know I should do that. Yeah, I should be eating differently. Yeah, I should be getting the sleep. Yeah, I know date night's important. Yeah, Sabbath is there, and I know I'm neglecting that. When we know the things to be doing, but for whatever reason, we can't seem to do it,
Hmm.
that's when we really need to get with somebody that can help hold up a mirror and help us identify our blind spots,
Yeah.
right? We don't know what we don't know, and being able to connect with somebody that can help us unpack that and go, why is it that we can't do the things that we know to do? What is it that's underneath that's kind of driving that for us? What's that about? And addressing those things then enables us to be able to do what it is we already know that we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
We just haven't been able to.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned, if you want to elaborate on, is you talked about the need for mentors,
Mm-hmm.
peers, and also the power of mentoring others. Uh,
Right.
yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the three different kinds of relationships that everybody needs in their life, right?
Yeah.
That we need these relationships that we allow others to pour into us, that we're humbly authentic with, that we're vulnerable with, that we allow into the hard spaces in our life, the good, the bad, the ugly, able to uh, be with us in those things and help us grow and mature. They've been down the road that we're traveling on, and they kind of know some of the things that lay ahead in a way that if we're wise, we can learn from their experience instead of having to learn every lesson ourselves.
Mm.
Like, we need those mentors in our life. We also need peers, right? We need folks that we can do life together, that are in the same station of life, that have kids and careers and life that are kind of in the same place, where we can do what scriptures say, just spur each other on to godliness, right? It's like we're shoulder to shoulder, we're doing life together. This is our support team, our network, our friends that we can Sabbath and rest and play together with, and that we can be there to support as they're in those stressful seasons. They can be there to support us. We're swapping kids so that we can alternate date nights and be able to get out with our spouse, and are encouraging each other to do that sort of thing. Right? It's that peers doing life together.
Yeah.
And then we need those that we're pouring out into, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those whom we're down the road a little bit further from where they're at, right? And doesn't matter where you're at in life, there's some kid that's, a few years behind you, walking the road that you traveled just not too long ago, right? And they too need somebody
Yeah.
willing to put a hand around their shoulder and say, you're going to make it. It's going to be okay. Yes, this is hard because it's hard. You're doing great. And to love on, encourage, challenge, like, that's a very healthy thing and way God made us, both to give and to receive.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing I've found. It's that sense of what gives me energy is pouring into others. And I tell you,
Mm-hmm.
if you could find what gives you energy, man, that'll be huge in that preventative measures when it comes to
Absolutely.
burnout. Yeah. Over the past few years, and the headlines have made this available to everyone, that we've seen pastors, lay leaders commit suicide or have stepped down from
Yeah.
ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to someone for a minute, maybe who's on the edge of a cliff,
Yeah.
and they're feeling the weight of it.
Yeah.
What's a final piece of advice that you'd give someone who may be experiencing burnout or is on that edge?
Totally. Yeah. I just want to say that there are a great number of powerful men and women of God
Mm,
that have changed the world in incredible ways, that have stood right on that edge that you're standing at,
mhm.
that you're not alone in that space. And where you're at right now doesn't define you and doesn't define your future. And this is not the way that it has to be. And that there are people who want to love on you and make space for you and figure this thing out with you.
Mm,
That I'm one of those people. We got a team of people on our team that's our calling in life, and to be able to be there and put our arm around you and figure this thing out together so that it can be different, you can feel different, your family can be different, and the calling that God has on your life, the impact that he wants to continue to use you for, can be fulfilled in full. And so, yeah, I know it's overwhelming right now, and it
mhm.
doesn't feel like it's going to end, but there's a way through this. There is a way through this.
Yeah, that's good. I want to encourage everyone to check out the article on burnout, and we'll have it linked in the notes below. So I'm going to go ahead and transition into our trending topic, which goes right along
Yeah.
with what we're talking about here, which is the topic of mental well-being. Let's talk
Hmm.
about that. What does it mean to be in a state of mental well-being?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. This is really the state that God wants us to live in, right? It's a
Mm,
place of thriving, right? That God designed us to thrive. Christ came that we might have life and have it to the fullest and with abundance. That He desires to bring healing and redemption to our body and to our
mm,
soul. That God did not create us to be in a place of not well-being, but instead to thrive, and has gone to great lengths in order to restore us and redeem us in a way that we can thrive in life. So this idea of mental well-being is one, recognizing the created design and purpose that God has for us, that He
mhm,
does want us to thrive, and that when we're not, something's not right. And that there's lots of folks that are not thriving then, but that's not because that's what God wants for them. He wants something more and different. And when we can identify that the fact that I'm not thriving presently means there's something wrong, can motivate me to get curious about
mm,
what is that? What is it that's keeping me from being in a thriving place right now? Maybe it's the reality of what we've been talking about, right? We're in a place of burnout for all the
yeah,
reasons that we've been talking about. And so we're not in a place of mental well being right now. We're not thriving because of all the things already stated, right? Or maybe it's something else, right? Maybe it's crises that we're facing. Maybe it's something biologically in our health that we're facing. Could be lots of different reasons that cause our sense of being at peace with ourselves and our relationships, with our calling, with the work that we engage, and just feeling fully alive, fully ourself, and enjoying the life that we've been given. That's that state of mental well-being that is achievable and that we can count on the Lord to help us figure out.
yeah, yeah. What are some measurable steps that someone can take to get to that true mental well-being, to where they're living that abundant life that Christ has for us?
Yeah, totally. So first, I'd say is to be honest with yourself. Be
Mm,
willing to look in the mirror and go, "Is am I experiencing that? Is that where I'm at?" And if I'm not, then to get curious about why I'm not, and to engage that curiosity with other
mhm,
people in your life, right? Which can be tricky also, right? Sometimes when we're in a place where we're not thriving and we're not in that place of well-being, sometimes part of the dynamic that has got us in that place are the people that are around us, right? That we don't maybe have the supports, maybe we don't have people that are healthy in a good place. And so while you cannot get there on your own, because God didn't design us to be silos, He designed us to live in community and be connected. You got to be honest not only with yourself, but you got to be honest with yourself about the people that are in your life. Are the people in
mhm,
your life thriving? Are the people in your life, are they in a state of mental well-being? Because if they're not, there's not a whole lot of help they're going to be to you in being able to get
mhm,
there. And so sometimes we're, trying to pull water from a well that's dry, right? Like we're
mhm,
desperately thirsty and needing refreshing, but this well can't deliver that because it doesn't have it to offer. And if we're surrounded in our life with people who don't have it to offer, then we're not going to be able to find it, and we need to expand our circles, right? Which sometimes
yeah,
means uh, you know, considering the community that we're engaged in. Are we engaged in a faith community? If we're in a faith community, are we on the fringes, or are we in a small group of folks that can actually have intimate and connected relationship? If we are in some sort of setting like that, is it healthy? Right? Just because you're in a church or in a small group doesn't mean that they're thriving, and doesn't mean that they're in a healthy place. There's
mhm,
pockets of kind of really unhealthy dynamics in every corner of the world, including in church. And so, if
hmm,
you're in a space, you need to evaluate, are the people I'm in community with in a healthy place, Or do I need to consider kind of making a change so that I can position myself around people who are thriving, who are in a mentally healthy and a state of well-being, who
Hmm.
can be a part of my journey getting there as well.
Yeah. So talk to the person who's struggling to enter into that healthy state of mind. Maybe they're in the pack of people who are also not in that mental well-being, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
they're on the fringes of their faith community.
Hmm.
What's something they can do to enter into a
Yeah.
healthy
So
state of mind?
starts with that honesty with yourself, right? There's
Yeah.
this being willing to look in the mirror, right? If we're not willing to look in the mirror and notice where we're at, then we can't do anything about it. And then it takes a willingness to look around at the relationships and the people in our life and go,
Hmm.
can I, are there resources that God's placed in my life in terms of people who I can engage and invite into this space, who can bear these burdens with me, that can encourage me, that can challenge me, that can be a conduit of God's grace into my life. And so, if curiosity is the first thing that's needed, right, or honesty, and then curiosity is the second thing that's needed, the third thing that's needed is courage, right?
Hmm.
It takes courage to be willing to do something with what you see in the mirror. Right? You can be like the person that Paul talks about that looks in the mirror and then turns away and forgets what they look like, or you can be a person that looks into the mirror and goes, whew, man, there's some things here that need to be different, and have the courage to face that and to get vulnerable and to invite others to be a support to us in those things so that we can have meaningful change happen in our life.
Yeah, I like that courage. It does. It takes so much courage to do that.
Yes.
That's good. I want to transition to our Q&A here at My Counselor Online. We love to answer your questions that you submit
I
to us.
love people's questions. I love it.
And boy,
I
do we
want
have
to
a
invite
great one.
everybody, send your questions in. And this is one of the cool opportunities that you have with My Counselor on Live and the live show, is to be able to submit your questions and have professional counselors, Christian counselors, be able to hear the question, respond to it, and didn't cost a dime.
Yeah, and in fact, you can submit those questions to MyCounselor.Online/ask. Or if
Mm-hmm.
you're watching this on YouTube, you can just comment down below and you can ask those questions. And we'll probably answer them in future episodes. And we've got a great question for both of us today. And this question is, I don't feel heard or respected in my marriage. My husband uses Bible verses to put me down and make me feel inferior.
Mm-hmm.
He specifically uses Ephesians 5:22-24. This person asks, what should I do?
Mm-hmm. Man, just hearing that makes my heart ache. I just
Hmm.
want to say to whoever put the question out there, thank you for your courage in submitting the question and
Yeah.
asking it. I know you're not alone out there and experiencing this, and my heart aches for you. I hate that you're kind of experiencing this and facing this. That's not a fun place to be,
Hmm.
and it's not the way it's supposed to be. I just want to encourage you that your creator and the author of the scriptures, cares about you and cherishes you. And it's not his desire that his word, which is meant to draw us closer to him and have us reveal him through the way we love one another, to be used in a way that would leave you feeling inferior or talked down to or lesser
Hmm.
than in some way. That you are precious and cherished by him, that he sees you, and that he valued you so much that the gospel is about him coming to be with you and have a relationship with you. And you
Hmm.
don't deserve to be treated that way and undermined in that way. So I just want to say that to you first and foremost. And I want to, just, honestly say it's frustrating to me to hear the scriptures be used in that way. That's I believe offensive to the heart of our God, who's about loving on and empowering people, not about oppression. and and people have used the scriptures to, to dictate and to lord over. And Jesus speaks to that directly as he talked to the leaders and the men and the Pharisees of the day that he was there, and he chastised them about their use of the scriptures to burden and weigh down and control the people. And he rebuffed them and said, "This is not my Father's heart. Like, you weigh down and you burden the people with these things." And he said, "Come to me and you'll find rest, you'll find peace, you'll find love." And so I just want to encourage you that that's not the voice of your creator and your king. And that for the scriptures to be used that way is a real distortion of the scriptures. And it's not the heart of God. And I would encourage you to allow into the circle with you some other women that can be of support and encouragement to you. There's a great book called The Emotionally Destructive Marriage that I would encourage you to check out, that can really help delineate between healthy biblical marriage and relationship and what that's supposed to look like versus what unhealthy, abusive, destructive dynamics look like. And I'm not saying I don't know enough about your story or about your situation to know if that's what's happening there. But I know that Leslie Vernick's book, The Emotionally Destructive Marriage, is one that would be helpful to you in determining whether or not the setting that you're in, what you're engaging, fits that criteria or not.
Yeah, so let's talk about these verses that she mentioned that the husband used. Okay.
Yeah.
And it says,
I have an undergrad in biblical languages,
Matt.
And my degree in counseling is from a seminary. So I love kind of like deep diving into the scriptures and going, what does the scriptures say here?
Because it's so important to understand context. And
yeah.
And so she's quoting, or her husband is quoting, "Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife," and so on. But verse 25 was left out. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, like he died.
Right. That's a pretty high bar, isn't it?
I've always thought and preached that, men, the calling is higher on you.
Right, for sure. Totally.
So Absolutely. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and you think about Jesus and how he led, right? Think about how he loved. And you can go all through the Gospels, and what you'll never find anywhere is Christ lording over folks in a domineering sort of way. Like he never drug anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, leading is not dragging. He would say, "Follow me." Right? And he lived out an example of servanthood. He lived out an example of love. He lived out an example of washing the disciples' feet, serving them, and said, "Do like I do." Right? Follow me. That was leadership. That was headship as Christ demonstrated amongst people. He wasn't finger wagging. He wasn't kind of telling them what they need to do. He wasn't shaming them for not doing what he wanted them to do. He said, "Follow me." And he led with example. That's what it means to love like Christ loved.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's, so if you're going to submit, then you're submitting to gentle leadership.
Totally. I mean, it's an entirely different paradigm than what you experience in a unhealthy kind of dysfunctional context. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Christ has a way of flipping things around.
He does that. Turns it upside down on its head, right?
Shakes it up, moves the goalpost. It's awesome. So if this couple walked into your office, how would you approach them?
Yeah. So if this couple walks into my office, the first thing I want to do is I want to suspend judgment, right? Like I recognize that there's a whole lot that I don't know. I
Right.
appreciate the question that's been submitted. And there's a whole lot that I'm can assume or things that I can take a guess at about what's going on or how the dynamics are, based on other couples that I've worked with, other situations that I've seen. But I'm not going to assume that this couple, as they walk in my door, that I already know what's going on with them. And so it's going to be my heart to really try to get into the shoes of the husband and to get in the shoes of the wife, kind of understand what's not working for them, understand what it is that they hope for and that they long for in their relationship, and to work as a team to identify what those obstacles are and to be able to establish some new patterns in their life of relating and engaging with each other that can really enable them to feel close and feel connected and feel like they're on the same team with each other, and to feel cherished by each other, to feel valued, that the things that they want and long for in life matter to one another, and that they're working together towards those things in their family. And so that's what they're going to experience with me and with any of the counselors on this team. Like that's really our heart, that we know beneath the conflicts, beneath the pain, beneath the disconnect is this longing for closeness and connection that God wired into them. And that's the reason why folks come to marriage counseling, right? They come, they may begin with kind of going, they hurt me, I'm frustrated with, I don't like, the complaints, the criticisms, because that's the pain that's right in our face. But the real reason that they came is not to kind of air out their spouse's bad behavior. It's because they're longing for closeness and connection, and they want for things to be different. And we know that, and we know how to help folks achieve that.
Yeah, well, Josh, this has been incredibly helpful and very needed, especially maybe those ministers who are watching. This has been very, very good. I want to thank our viewing audience, our listening audience for tuning in today. And Josh, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for writing that article. I've got some people in mind that I'm going to send it to over the next couple of days. Your insights greatly appreciated.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. I hope that it's a blessing to the body.
Right. Indeed, it is. So if you have a question, I want to remind you that you can submit your questions and they may be answered on a future episode of My Counselor Online. You can submit it to MyCounselor.Online/ask, or you can comment below. Also, make sure you stay up to date with all the latest helpful, encouraging content by subscribing to all of our channels, and follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook at Love My Counselor. We're on Instagram at Love My Counselor, and YouTube at MyCounselor.Online Christian Counseling. Thanks again, Josh, and thank you guys so much for watching. And we'll see you next week for another episode of My Counselor Live.